So if you exclude chapter 104, which was a prequel to the prequel of the Dragon Ball Super superhero arc in the Dragon Ball Super manga, we've had no new story developments from the Dragon Ball Super manga for circa 50 months, 1 year, 3 months. In that time, however, we have obviously had the Dragon Ball Super Daima animation from Toei working alongside Dragon Room's Iyoku and Toriyama himself, and obviously that finished a couple of months ago now, and even if you want to look at the dubs, they are now finished, or at least predominantly finished. Of course, we still have no confirmation on when the Dragon Ball Super manga is returning. Sticking with Shueisha might not actually be the option he takes moving forward. So let's just talk about that. Now, I must say, I think June is a very big month in terms of announcements for the future of the Dragon Ball Super story. If we're going to get it, it's going to be in June. I knew May would be a quiet month, but June is big. Here's why. At the beginning of July, Toyotaro himself will be in Paris. Now, if Toriyama was still in charge, this type of thing just didn't happen. However, this doesn't necessarily mean good or bad news, because I'll read out what the site says, and I might go to Paris to meet Toyotaro depending on how we can meet him. If it's just a press conference, then I'm not just going to watch that. But if there are meet and greets with Toyotaro, I might go. And before I read out what the site says, what question do you think I should ask him if I got a chance to ask a question? I've got an idea. In fact, this is my idea, but if you can come up with a better one down in the comment section, I'll reconsider. I might take either my Daizenshu in or my Super Exciting Guides in and ask if we can get a Dragon Ball Super version of the Super Exciting Guides or Daizenshu, so that we get a load of information regarding lots of questions we have about Dragon Ball Super. Smash a like on the video if you think that's a good idea. Let me know if you agree with it down in the comment section, or suggest a better idea. I might get that chance. I don't know if we'll answer it. Obviously, I don't speak kanji, but who knows? You got to shoot your shot, right? So Toyotaro himself will be at the Japan Expo in Paris at the beginning of July. Obviously, I'm from London, so I can get to Paris quite easily, but it won't just be Toyotaro at this event. Obviously, Toyotaro, we expect, if the manga was to be coming soon, to be working heavily and being dedicated to the story of Dragon Ball Super. So there is a question himself. If he's got time to go to a convention, is he really drawing up the next arc of Dragon Ball Super? Or is it not on the horizon anytime soon due to the ongoing battles behind the scenes between Dragon Room and Shueisha? Still, at the Japan Expo in Paris, it won't just be Toyotaro, the lead writer of the Dragon Ball Super manga series. It will also be Torishima, who was formerly Akira Toriyama's editor and went on to eventually becoming the executive director of Shueisha magazines. However, he is now an independent manga publisher. He is also going to be at the Japan Expo from July the 3rd to 6th in Paris. But it's not just him. Nakatsuru is also going to be there. Now, Nakatsuru worked on the Buu arc and the animation for Dragon Ball Z. Many people often consider him to be probably the closest to the original manga art style in terms of his animation direction, and he also worked on Dragon Ball Daima, where he worked as the chief animation director, basically the latest series created by Dragon Room and Toei with Toriyama. And obviously the animation, even if you didn't like the story, which I didn't particularly, it was stunning. They are 3 major players in the Dragon Ball hierarchy in terms of creation. 3 absolutely major players. Nakatsuru has worked on Daima and with Iyoku recently. Torishima, famous for working with Toriyama, is now independent. That leaves just Toyotaro, who is, we presume, contracted to Shueisha. Or is he? It's been over a year. You know how contracts work with companies. What type of contract does he have with them? Does he have to work with them? Does he have the option to maybe jump ship and go and work with Iyoku? Obviously, that leaves questions about the Dragon Ball Super continuity, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So this is what the Japan Expo website says. Obviously, this has been written by somebody on their website, but it could be telling. Okay, so I'm going to go straight to the bottom part. If you want to read it, just pause it so you can read all of it. But it states, Toyotaro will talk about his latest creative challenge during on-stage conferences at Japan Expo 2025. Then it says, don't miss the unique chance to meet him at a signing session. So I guess I'm going then. But ultimately, it said that he's going to talk about his latest challenge or his creative challenge. Is that Dragon Ball Super moving forward? Or is it going to be something else? Obviously, the image he drew a month or so ago and his interviews suggested that the new arc is coming, but perhaps he is going to work with Dragon Room instead, or perhaps they've finally come to an accord with their disputes over rights about the Dragon Ball series post Toriyama's passing. But importantly, The mix of the 3 people that are going to this convention is definitely a telltale sign. Let me know what you think about it down in the comment section. In terms of my thoughts, the most idealistic outcome would be that they've all made amends. Toyotaro will get to continue the Dragon Ball Super story, or at least finish it off, and then start his new chapter of a Dragon Ball story afterwards, as Toriyama's heir to the throne, I guess. And then maybe other heirs to that throne can be delivered later on, and it continues like a comic series from DC or Marvel, where new writers get to try their hand at certain story elements from the Dragon Ball verse that Toriyama has made extremely expansive, not just with the multiverse, but with the demon realm. The keys to the kingdom have truly become enormous. For any future writers that do get to work on a Dragon Ball series, whether it includes Goku or not, what a gift from Toriyama to pass down his verse and the size of the verse and the lore to any future writer and give them the freedom of play that they would need creating new stories. Wow, legend forever. But the 3 people involved in this convention, like I said, Nakatsuru worked on Daima recently, so he's worked for Dragon Room, nothing to do with Shueisha, works with Toei, etc. Torishima no longer works for Shueisha, he's an independent worker. Toyotaro is the only one we presume to work for Shueisha. But does he? He is a free man. He can work for whoever he likes. He may have a contract, but how long does that contract last for? It's been over a year. Has that contract run out? He's not a prisoner to Shueisha. So the question is, have Shueisha pissed off Akio Iyoku so much that he's acquired the Triforce of power creatively moving forward for the Dragon Ball franchise? Obviously, effects that may come from that are, for example, the Moro arc and the Granola arc. How many rights do Burst Studios and the Dragon Room have in terms of using those characters in the future? You would assume not many, considering that the games still haven't got those characters yet, or even transformations yet, such as Ultra Ego. But then if they have Toyotaro, who was a creator, maybe there's something they could work out there, maybe some sort of loopholes. If you have any idea about this stuff, let people know down in the comment section what could be the potential outcomes if Toyotaro was to jump ship. Of course, we know about the behind the scenes battles between Dragon Room's Iyoku and Shueisha over the rights of Dragon Ball post Toriyama. Dragon Ball Daima was Iyoku going in his own separate direction, and whether that story will eventually merge with Dragon Ball Super's continuity or not remains to be seen. Even though there seems to be a lot of contradictions from the main series, it does imply that there is something coming after season 1, potentially a season 2 or a movie, given the way the story ended with them finding more third eyes and being left in the demon realm. There is noise that Daima is basically started because Toriyama and the Dragon Room, Iyoku, etc. are becoming increasingly frustrated with Shueisha over how they let out the rights for Dragon Ball, and that's why Dragon Ball Daima got started, and perhaps have been trying to negotiate a merge between the two and have given up. Well, why not take their biggest asset, Toyotaro? It would be a smart move business-wise, and Dragon Room and Iyoku have definitely given me the indication they understand business and marketing far more than Shueisha, who seem like dinosaurs in comparison. In fact, there's even been a report recently that suggests that Dragon Ball this year made more money in a single annual year without Shueisha's help than Shueisha have ever made with their entire catalogue, including One Piece, in an annual year before. It's balmy. Dragon Ball is the king, especially internationally, and Viz don't seem to understand that Dragon Ball is their way forward to break international markets for their other products by having them aligned with such a king, basically, in Goku. But even though some people liked Daima, I wasn't particularly one of them, even though I thought the animation was the best we've ever got from a Dragon Ball product. There were some interesting concepts introduced that could definitely help the Dragon Ball Super story moving forward, but I think the majority of us want to see Dragon Ball Super either concluded or that story be brought to animation first before we get any kind of deviation away from the main storyline. And obviously that becomes in severe jeopardy if Toyotaro was to leave Shueisha and join the Dragon Room. Of course, they gained Toyotaro, who's worked closely with Toriyama and has a close idea of what Toriyama wants from his Dragon Ball stories moving forward. But I think you've seen the reaction to Daima. Most people wanted the Moro arc animated, and it doesn't look like we're getting that anytime soon because of Shueisha, and we may even lose forms like Ultra Ego. Is this why we didn't see Vegeta use Ultra Ego in chapter 103 of the Dragon Ball Super Manga? Because they know they won't be able to use Ultra Ego moving forward. They could imply that he's achieved it in future storylines, but without directly addressing it completely. So give the indication that it's happened before, so therefore we understand the Moro arc and Granola arcs have happened, but the future of the story happens with Toyotaro working under a different company. Once again, idealistically, I think the best thing that could happen for the Dragon Ball franchise moving forward, so it got as big as it could ever get, is for them to return to a weekly manga, with Toyotaro using this circa over a year of time to really prepare and get ahead of the game, announcing a Moro arc animation to come in a year or two's time once another arc has been completed in the manga, so they've got enough arcs ahead of the anime, whilst the Dragon Room work on a season 2 of Daima or a movie to conclude that particular story. But obviously there are greedy people in this world, and Shueisha, they just seem to be dinosaurs and don't understand the game at all. Anyway guys, let me know your thoughts on this down in the comment section. I believe by July the 6th, we'll definitely know an answer on the future of this series, especially where Toyotaro is going next. And I guess you could say he's the MVP of the franchise at the moment, moving forward creatively. Oh, big month, big month. Looking forward to reading what you got to say. Smash a like on the video, it does truly help the channel. Lend me your energy against the YouTube algorithm, completely biased in favour of shorts that are nonsensical, so I can send an enormous Genki Dharma. Until next time, Ad Astra.